Hey everybody, welcome back to Front Page Fitness. It is me, Eric Trexler, joined as always by the Dr. Lauren Colenso-Semple. Lauren, how are you doing tonight?
So I got this clock for aesthetic reasons, because who cares about an analog clock? But I got it. It's right here in the back, and it ticks. And I really hate a ticking clock. I want to throw it across the room. It bothers me.
Have you
Uh,
considered, if it's just for aesthetics, do you think people would notice if you just simply had it not function? Like if it just was
and it
set?
was always on the same time.
Yeah, you can change
I,
the
c-
time from appearance to appearance.
I couldn't handle the clock not being on the right time. So
Okay.
my solution has been to just like constantly wear headphones in this room, so I don't have to hear the clock tick.
Wow, that is quite an interesting ensemble of problems you've created and solved for yourself. That
Thank
that
you.
is something. Lauren, how are the vibes in Canada after America swept your people in men's hockey and women's hockey in the gold medal matches?
As somebody who interacts with very few people and is not entrenched in the hockey community, I have to say I have absolutely no idea.
Well, maybe you haven't encountered anyone because everybody's just in mourning and no one has left their house ever since the two games happened.
That's possible. And, I think we've done a lot of really solid Olympic coverage on Front Page Fitness. That's obviously our bread and butter. And I was way more interested in unpacking the luge and the biathlon and way less interested in talking about hockey. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, hockey though is kind of, from my view, the crown jewel because it's the only Winter Olympic sport that can generate something of an audience in the United States. So there is
Mm.
a completely viable, high quality hockey league that has people in seats, and so by my ruling, that it makes it the official crown jewel in terms of Winter Olympic events, and therefore by winning the gold in both the men's and women's side of the sport, that means that technically, regardless of medal counts, America won the Olympics. And I think, Lauren, you were pretty excited because you said that a couple of your heroes, RFK Jr. and Kid Rock, were working out, and it was kind of a very celebratory vibe, something that a patriot like you could really get behind. So you gave me this video. I have not seen it yet. I'm watching it live. Oh,
Can the
Lord.
chat see it?
They cannot see it. I'm sorry.
Oh no.
But I see the two of them. I saw a bear, I saw a bald eagle. Now the shirts are off, and we are walking into the gym. RFK Jr., of course, in his signature jeans, always working out in jeans.
Always.
I don't understand what's going on there. So, Lauren, how did this make you feel when you saw this? Did you feel the exceptional hockey prowess kind of dripping off the screen? Oh my God, is he in a sauna in jeans?
Yeah, there's a lot of eagles. There's a lot of American flags. They're doing some resistance training. They're doing some partner work, like sit-ups while
Oh
one
my,
holds the other one's feet.
Lauren,
Um,
he just
this the sauna when you're like on an Airdyne bike while and the other one's doing push-ups and then they switch. I have questions.
Lauren, he
Uh,
literally got in the cold plunge and
in his
submerged
jeans.
himself in jeans.
Yeah,
It
that's a choice.
Okay,
It's
so
a
I,
choice.
I forget what his title is. He's like the czar of health for America, right? RFK Jr. He's officially in charge of our health. Has he found a cure for chafing and he's not telling anyone? How is he doing sauna jeans, workout jeans, and even cold plunge jeans, and just completely immune to the treachery that is chafing?
So he is the Secretary for Health and Human Services, and his mission is that we all apparently move more and eat real food. And he's gone after a lot of the really terrible things like food dyes and non-fat dairy. And so this video ends with them in some sort of cold plunge situation, drinking whole milk together. And
Yeah.
they have a graphic on the screen that clearly mentions it's whole milk. This, who edited this and why and whose idea was this? I have so many questions because I know that bros like to work out together, and having a workout partner is great. But why is there workout equipment in the sauna? Why are you shirtless when it's unnecessary and then in pants when you should be in like a bathing suit? Have you ever
Yeah.
done push-ups in a sauna?
You know what? I actually am going to be temporarily living in an apartment, and there is a there. I'm very excited. There's a sauna in the building. So, what I'm going to do for the good of the show is, once I move there within the next month or so, I'm going to start doing the sauna in jeans every morning, and I might even honestly, I might kick it up a notch and do the full, in honor of the Olympic match, a full Canadian tuxedo, just denim
Oh,
head to toe,
yeah.
and I'll report back because, in the interest of being open minded and scientific, maybe he's onto something. How would I know? I have no evidence to refute that claim. So I'm going to give it a shot. I will say this, Lauren. As much as being a hater soothes my soul, he's pretty jacked for his age. Like he's, you got to give him that. Purely based on body composition. I don't know his VO2 max. I don't know his blood pressure. He does have a pinkish hue to him that kind of signals some elevated blood pressure. I'm worried about that, but he's pretty jacked.
Yeah, he's also been seen going into tanning salons in public.
What's wrong with going into tanning salons in public?
As the Secretary of Health and Human Services,
Well, I
who's
mean,
trying to
he's
make America health again,
humans
healthy
don't.
again.
I mean, he's not going to be that shade without the tanning bed. I don't know what you expect him to do. I mean, he could go with the spray tan, but that comes with its other host of issues.
Like what? Like
Uh,
streaking?
Streaking, especially when you're in the sauna in jeans. Like how do you expect him to do sauna jeans and have a sprayed on tan with a water soluble base? What do you want this man to do?
You're giving RFK Jr. way more grace than I anticipated, I must say.
Listen, we are. I'm trying to be fair and balanced, and just save everyone from the political mudslinging that is Lauren Colenso-Semple. But no, listen.
Listen, I also would like to just question the caption of this video is, my mission is move more and eat real food. And it's like, I don't take issue with that as a mission, but the video is them in this like bizarre center that has multiple cold plunges and saunas and a whole host of exercise equipment and clearly a chef preparing some of this food. And like, I will just say that as an American who has lived in America, that's not the average American's experience when it comes to like access to good food and exercise.
That's true. Yeah, they are in quite an elaborate lodge type setting with some kind of indoor grotto. So it's honestly, I'm assuming this is Kid Rock's house because this is a highly unusual venue. So hey, good for him. He's got quite the setup, and we will. Hey, I will check back in after my sauna jeans experiment, and I'll let you know. Maybe he was off base for the first time ever. Maybe he was on to something for the millionth time ever. Time will tell.
I find that highly unlikely, and I question that you will ever do it. So I will hold you to that, and I'll make a note to continue circling back until you actually do it and prove that you did it.
Perfect. Listen, I am a man of my word, and I will make this happen. Before we get too far away from the Olympics, do you want to tie up the loose ends with this swag procedure? Because I feel like this does relate to that Olympic issue, correct?
This does. So I believe it was 2 weeks ago where we talked about the ski jumping and that they were injecting hyaluronic acid into their penises for performance benefits. And it turns out that penis injections are back because we have a headline from our favorite publication, the New York Post. Men are going to extreme lengths to make their penises bigger with bizarre swag procedure. I don't know about you, but the acronym SWAG to me has been stuff we all get or shit we all get, if you want to be crass, which we never are on this podcast. And I was surprised to see it kind of renamed or repurposed for this conversation.
See, I was going back to when I hear swag, it takes me back to a very specific time in rap culture. Right around the time I was like a junior in high school.
Okay.
That was the slang term short for swagger, not an acronym. Although I have heard the version you're speaking of, but I certainly did not think about injecting hyaluronic acid into one's genitals and then waiting for it to harden for a number of days for the sole purpose of increasing girth, which seems to be what some people are doing for various purposes, some Olympic and some non-Olympic.
Yeah, this article is about the non-Olympians. The doctor, a Manhattan plastic surgeon, says that our inquiries usually come in around 2 a.m. Patients, I think, late night are Googling, how can I increase the size of my penis? So, the procedure, swag in this context stands for Schaefer width and girth. And Schaefer is the doctor in question. He charges 10 to 20,000 with maintenance injections costing about half that. And apparently he's performed this procedure on 8,000 men and they anesthetize the base of the penis and then inject the hyaluronic acid, which increases length and amplifies girth. And um, I,
Yeah, there's a lot going on here.
I,
I like the pull quote that was highlighted in the article. It says, molding it is like when you're making a pizza and you push the dough and the dough keeps wanting to come back to the center. That's a pull quote that they put in big font in the middle of the article. I don't know why they chose to highlight that, but it expresses the challenge of getting the implanted hyaluronic acid to set in the correct position. So there's a lot going on here, very intricate procedure. And the thing that kills me is this one person they were talking about paid 18 grand for the initial treatment and then 5,000 for maintenance sessions, which happen every 6 to 12 months. I mean, this is a serious financial investment. But when you talk about the idea that you have to do maintenance sessions and kind of replenish the hyaluronic acid, that kind of brought me to my big question, which I don't understand this at all. I remember back in the day when people, I'm sure they still do it, but back when I was really into bodybuilding, people would inject synthol, a synthetic oil-like substance, which basically would be this kind of contoured implant to kind of round off muscles that were lacking depth. But my question with that and my question with this are the same. Where does it go, Lauren?
uh, so it's broken down by an enzyme over time. So it doesn't last forever, but and this was a big thing last year, or perhaps the year before, with a lot of celebrities who are getting a lot of facial injection fillers, which is also hyaluronic acid, some of them, and the filler was starting to migrate, and so the site in which you injected ends up traveling elsewhere, which isn't always desirable or aesthetic.
Yeah.
And
Go to
I
like your brow and just give you like a very pronounced forehead. That wouldn't be what you're going for.
No, it'd be more like people would get it in their cheeks and then they would like droop down, or they'd get it in their butts and
Ooh.
then it start to travel down. So like more problematic than what you're suggesting. But one of the quotes that I liked was, it's kind of like if you don't have a very big canvas for your painting, you can't make a big painting. Very poetic of Dr. Schaefer and the New York Post.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what else can you say? So apparently people were doing this to be more aerodynamic in certain jumping related activity, like ski jumps. Is that right?
That's right.
And also for day-to-day leisure time use as well.
There is a possibility of phallus fiascos. Love the
Wow.
New York Post. So, be careful about where and by whom you get your penis injected.
Yeah, I think that's good advice always. Now, Lauren, staying on one of the things that I hate about this show we do is that you hate men, and as a result, we very rarely cover men's topics, which is
Yes.
interesting because you hate women too. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around exactly what your angle is here. But as much as you
They only
hate
like dogs.
True, yeah, but as much as you hate men, I feel like you hate women more. At least that's the what I hear on the internet. But
Right.
you threw me a bone here, and you had a
Did.
link to the Men's Health 2026 best food for men. So this is food that if you're a man like me, you got to start eating it now because we have really only about 10 months left to get the best of it. So Lauren, I assume that you shared this in a way that was completely positive, not snarky. So, what is the best food for me and people like me this year specifically?
Yeah, so this it all there's links to every single product here, and they are, fitness and health oriented because it is men's health, but they have this broken down into categories of breakfast, lunch slash dinner, and snacks. And I don't know if you had the opportunity to give this a bit of a look-see, but they're all like packaged either frozen food or or food you can eat out of
RFK Jr. is
can
rolling over in his. Well, he can't
in his
roll over in your
jeans.
grave when you're alive. He's squirming in his sauna sweaty jeans right now as you send this post.
There's not a single non-processed food on this list. And
And
again, I mean,
one of
we've
them's
talked.
even called mush. I mean, that's how more ultra processed can you get?
Um, you know, I just feel like Men's Health could have maybe considered like one thing that you actually need to cook, even easy, right? Like it could just an easy, your old lasagna recipe, for example. Um, but it's one of the perfect examples of like weird kind of proteined up snack foods. Is how I would describe a lot of these. Like it's mac and cheese, but it's higher protein, or it's a hungry man's dinner, but it's higher protein. That's how I would just describe the general list.
Yeah. Yeah, the way that I would describe it personally is it's a lot of food products where you basically spend about 40% more money than you thought. You
Mm.
eat it, you ate 30% more calories than you really thought. It didn't really fill you up, and you're just looking at it like, what did I do here? Like what happened? So like these kind of like prepackaged like protein oats, high protein pretzels. It just is kind of this whole niche category of overpriced prepackaged foods that really don't fill you up at all, and you just feel like I wasted a lot of calories and a lot of money, and I'm no better for it.
It
That is,
reminds me of the mid 2000s when everyone was kind of anti carbs. And so all of these organic food companies were coming out with these, seed crackers or this sort, starch resistant snack or all of this that again, yeah, you'd have to buy it at a health food store. It was incredibly overpriced and it was still fairly high calorie. And again, it wasn't actually real, quote unquote, real food. So I don't know what we're doing here. I don't know why we need Chi protein hot cereal when we could just make some oatmeal and like dump a bit of protein powder, maybe some berries. I personally do that regularly and it's good and it's pretty cheap if you get regular oatmeal and some frozen berries.
yeah.
Um,
Can I
so
just rant a little bit here? I'm sorry.
I thought you were being positive today.
No, I got a problem here because I am a frugal gentleman.
We know, yeah.
And it really grinds my gears here that I'm looking at what is essentially like being marketed as like a high-end Slim Jim, and you're buying these a 10 stick bag for $25. Like I over my dead body am I paying $2.50 for a particularly small Slim Jim, Lauren? This is what really is getting a serious reaction out of me. I'm very displeased by that.
But the beef sticks are flavored with black truffle and black garlic.
Well, it must be, that really rare truffle sought out by the finest pigs, only available 2 weeks out of the year, and flash frozen for purity. Because otherwise, I'm not giving you $2.50, Lauren, for a relatively small Slim Jim. It's not going to happen. I'll have my regular Slim Jims, by the way. And maybe I'm tone deaf, Lauren. I've been out of the Slim Jim market for some time. Becoming a vegetarian really put a dent in my ability to stay on top of that. But if Slim Jims are going for 250 as well, then maybe I've just priced myself out of beef entirely.
Can I just say how the website describes this? Michelin trained chefs transform premium beef into gourmet beef sticks infused with black truffle and fermented black garlic. A $3.50 pocket-sized luxury delivering the indulgence of a $200 tasting menu. Snacking redefined.
Yeah, I mean that sounds wow. Honestly, oh, okay, this is smart. You know how sometimes they'll do the little like 5-star and 1-star reviews? They put a 1-star up on the main page, and I was like, whoa, that was a mistake. But it was like, oh my God, this is so good that now my kids won't eat anything else. Like, this is awful. So I see what they're doing there. Very clever. No, I listen. I think it's great that you can have essentially like a 2 Michelin star multi-course meal sitting in your pocket in the form of a Slim Jim for what should be $3.50 according to them, but is on sale for $2.50. So if that piques your interest, folks, then you are welcome to it, and I will not I won't hold it against you if that's the kind of decision you want to make with your food selections.
Another on the food train, our listener P sent me this, and it's another high protein food, very novel. Says protein really big on the label, and it's a can of tuna, Trex. It's a can of tuna, and I got news for you and the listener. Canned tuna happens to be high in protein.
Yeah, do you think they did something to it to make it a higher protein version of tuna with olive oil?
I do not, because it has 18 grams of protein, and that is right on par with most canned tuna products.
Yeah. Well, hey.
Maybe even slightly under, depending on what you go for. But
Yeah.
I just think it's, I mean, what marketing theater we've come to be like, I have protein too, and you didn't change anything other than the label. Not
Yeah.
that I support like, protein coconut water, but I'm just saying that it's like buying chicken and then slapping a big protein sticker on it. Like we know. We were aware.
Yeah. No, I hear you. It's everyone's trying to keep up with their packaging and their marketing. So this is imagine tuna, Lauren, and now imagine tuna with protein. That is what you're getting from John West and Company, blended with the finest olive oil and maybe some truffle oil as well.
I would be way more interested in the low protein tuna as to like how much stuff you have to put into it to make
Yeah.
it, it would be pretty gross. I guess, if you add in a whole lot of mayo, and celery and you make like the highest calorie tuna salad ever, it would start to be lower protein, but you'd have to have some more ingredients to make it truly low protein.
Yeah, it'd be difficult to do. All right, Lauren. I think we're all the men out there. That's for us. Now we know how we're gonna eat in 2026. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked because I just saw high protein macaroni and cheese. So 14 grams of protein and I don't know, probably like 700 million calories. So anyway, that's for
That's
us.
like when they made pasta healthier by making it chickpea instead of wheat.
Yes, I think there are multiple chickpea products on this list. Believe me. But all right, Lauren, where to next? What is our next thing here from the outline?
I think we need to go. Well, let's stay on food, right?
Okay.
Let's go drama about the Reese's peanut butter cup.
Ooh, okay. We got drama. What's going on with Reese's?
So the grandson of the inventor is mad because he used to eat a Reese's product every day, and now apparently Hershey's is cutting corners, and what you're getting isn't even chocolate and peanut butter. It's a chocolate-like substance and a peanut butter-like substance. And so what I learned from reading this article on today.com is there are certain standards for to say it's chocolate, but you can get around this by saying it's chocolate candy. And the
Mm,
same goes for peanut butter. You can say it's a peanut butter cream instead of actual peanut butter. So apparently, they are using higher percentages of these fillers to cut corners, let's be honest. And because they're cheaper, let's be honest. But the grandfather, Brad Reese, is mad. He's written multiple letters to the company, and he did an interview on morning TV to express his outrage on behalf of his grandfather.
wow. And so this whippersnapper, he's what, 70 years old, right?
Yes.
So so he's out there fighting the good fight. He wrote on February 14th, Valentine's Day, no less. He wrote a strongly worded letter to Hershey's corporate brand manager, telling him, "Hey, you need to get this sorted out." Here's the thing that I like about this. He is the grandson of H.B. Reese. I so badly want to go back to the days where every man who is going to go out and form a company decided to go by his first two initials. That is such a power move, or first initial middle name. And I used to jokingly go by my first initial and middle name when I wanted to sound like I was some kind of like robber baron 1920s philanthropist. Whenever I wanted to make a power move.
What I found interesting about this dive into Hershey's history is also that H.B. Reese worked at Hershey's
Yeah.
for only 2 years before forming his own candy company. Can you imagine? I mean, what a hustler.
Yeah. And I feel like nowadays, like that was in 1919. I feel like
That's right.
nowadays you would get just absolutely pummeled by a large company with all sorts of like non-competition clauses and intellectual property issues, and they would just kind of sue you into submission. But good for HB for going out there doing his own thing, and then guess what? His six sons sell it back to Hershey in 1963, hopefully for a pretty penny.
And, good on Brad for really prioritizing quality control, and good on today.com for giving us the really hard-hitting news that we need.
I will say this, Lauren. I don't know about you, but I had a thing I would do back in the day. I would take a very fine, high quality dark chocolate with a high percentage. What's the percentage?
Cacao.
Cacao, yes, which is I assume different than cocoa. So a high percentage for that, and I would put on a high quality peanut butter product, and I would just eat peanut butter on my dark chocolate like that. And to Brad's credit, this 70-year-old grandson whippersnapper out here causing us all sorts of trouble for Hershey's, he's got a point. Like when you go from a Hershey's peanut butter cup to an actual like decent chocolate with some peanut butter on it, it is a night and day difference. And so I think Brad is absolutely correct, and I support his efforts.
But as a callback to everything we just talked about with that Men's Health article, there was this company, I think it was called Sun Cups or something, but it was this organic, three times the price version of a peanut butter cup that you were supposed to buy because it's healthier and more natural. And it tasted exactly like a Reese's peanut butter cup. But maybe times have changed, and maybe that is something that we should all explore for those of us who regularly consume Reese's peanut butter cups.
Speaking of times maybe changing and various food related items, we had two people in the chat right now. By the way, huge shout out to the live chat. Appreciate you being with us live here. Someone asked if McDonald's still sells chocolatey chip cookies. Are you familiar did they really market them as chocolatey instead of chocolate chip? That's my question back to the chat. And someone also said that the Oreo Reese's mashup is delicious. I find that to be very easy to believe. I feel like with Oreos and with Reese's cups, you really can't go wrong there. But I will say this, Lauren, let me know if you think I'm crazy. I think the unsung hero of the candy world for a long time, there's been two unsung heroes that get totally overlooked. Number one, the Three Musketeers bar. I love that whipped up, chocolatey, nougaty, whatever it is in the middle of a Three Musketeers bar. Absolutely delightful. The other unsung hero, getting more to the point, is the Reese's Pieces. Reese's Pieces, to me, actually eclipsed the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. And I think in a just world, the most popular candy in the world would be a one-to-one mixture of M&Ms and Reese's Pieces sold together. Let bygones be bygones. Brad, make peace with the Hershey board. Does Hershey make no, Mars I think makes M&Ms, right?
My candy knowledge
That's your problem, Lauren. You have no knowledge and no brand loyalty. You bring nothing to the table in these conversations.
Well, I
So
do know that the Reese's Pieces they don't have chocolate. It's just a peanut butter, like it's like a peanut butter M&M, but it's smaller and it has a hard shell candy coating.
yeah, okay. M&Ms are in fact manufactured by Mars. Don't know why I knew that, but I did. So that what I would say to Brad, while he's trying to stir up all this trouble, if you really want to get back at the Hershey folks, go do a big collaboration with Mars and get you a 1-to-1 ratio prepackaged, sell that, and that's going to fly off the shelves, Lauren.
I will say one thing because my mom is from England, my dad's from Australia, and the chocolate in both of those places is far better than the garbage made in the US. But the US will act like they're selling the same things and then just reformulate it with these cheap, nastier versions and try to bamboozle you.
Yeah, it's going to happen. That's how we do it. All right, Lauren, anything else that you want to get off your chest with regards to candy, chocolate, or the companies that make them?
Not today. I think I'm good.
Okay. Do you want to let's do some lighter fare. Little shift here, but this is top of mind for me. I'm teaching a course this semester on exercise and public health. So you have a link here that says which U.S. states exercise the most and the least. So I haven't looked at it. I'm gonna go ahead and pre-register my picks. Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess that Colorado exercises the most, and that Mississippi exercises the least.
You're fairly close.
Okay.
Just for some background, this is unpublished data from an ongoing, which is shocking that the New York Post is covering legitimate science. But this is an initiative with people who are using Apple Watch and or iPhone and registering to be part of this trial all over the country. And so they're getting trends from the technology to then draw some kind of inferences about heart rate and heart rate variability and extrapolating to VO2 max and time spent exercising in different intensities and all that stuff. So I'm surprised that you didn't say California because that was going to be my pick, and it looks like uh, the top U.S. states that are exercising them. I mean, and when we say exercising the most, there's different measures here. But are we going off of watch reported VO2 max as our exercising the most metric, or
See, now you're getting me angry because again, I'm teaching a university course on exercise and public health, and when we say exercising, that usually implies not a watch-based estimate of VO2 max based on God knows what. It usually means, for example, how much time did you spend exercising?
Well, we can't really get that, but for mean VO2 max, Colorado is up there. Um, and Mississippi is down there, but Louisiana takes the cake.
Yeah, yeah, Louisiana. That's tough. I assumed so. There's like a really good, super high quality research center down in Louisiana called the Pennington Biomedical Research Center, and because it is like so top of the line for studying like metabolism and exercise and body composition and things like that, I just pretend that that permeates through the whole state of Louisiana in my mental model of it, and like, well, how could there be low exercise participation rates in the place that has Pennington Biomedical Research Center? You know, it makes no
Mm.
sense. But the reality is, it's kind of like, a lot of times you put the big, nutrition obesity research center in a state that has high rates of obesity and low rates of physical activity and things like that. So that is my groveling and explanation for being quite wrong. But yeah, Colorado, to my credit, the color coded image. There's basically like 3 or 4 places that are a particularly dark red, which in this case is good, which is odd. That's a choice. But they are about as dark red as anybody. But yeah, it looks like California takes the cake.
So when you go to mean sleep heart rate, they actually inverse what's good and bad in terms of color. So they
Sure.
stick with high and low. And interestingly enough, we got Louisiana again with the highest mean sleep heart rate, but Wyoming is taking the cake for lowest mean sleep heart rate. So I don't know how we scale that one.
Yeah. Well, I assume that everyone sleeping in Louisiana is sweating as they sleep, and it's like 91 degrees and humid at night. So probably we're just seeing higher heart rates because they're having loss of, plasma volume, sweating out, getting a little dehydrated. So I think I can explain that one away. In Wyoming,
Then how do you explain North Dakota having high heart rates?
um, I don't have one for that. Wyoming, though, it's so beautiful, so peaceful. My heart rate would get down to about 30. Just so relaxing.
All right. Well, yeah. I think this is one example of the New York Post slightly misrepresenting what the study is actually collecting data for. But since it's the first and only time the New York Post has ever done that, we'll give them a pass.
And like to their credit, they like really tried to plot like genuine data here.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is this is pretty intense stuff for the New York Post. So I think we need to lay off of them a little bit. Now, this was all, it sounds like, related to Apple Health and smartwatch, maybe, yeah, smartwatch data, things like that. So you happened upon yet another wearable, and this is growing to be kind of a sub theme for you, Lauren, which is you complaining about wearables. So, what is the new wearable on the menu, and why are you so excited about it?
Yeah, I'm disappointed to actually have to talk about wearables yet again, but this is different and it's called Fort. Or maybe it's not called Fort, but it's made by Fort. And this claim is the wearable actually tracks strength. So this is a wrist wearable like all the others, and it claims to automatically identify exercises, count reps, and analyze form. And so it will give you feedback. For example, you need to do more for your calves. Like your volume is lagging.
Right.
And it'll track your heart rate, obviously, because don't they all? I do not know how they know what exercise you're doing on a wrist wearable. I have a lot of questions about that. Um, but that's the claim. And it's built by a team of Tesla engineers, so they got to know a whole lot about lifting, right?
Yeah, so it says on their page here, it says, how does automatic tracking work? And it says it uses an accelerometer plus gyroscope and a heart rate sensor, which is pretty standard for, kind of a higher end wrist worn device. So I don't know. That brings me to their next thing, which is what metrics does this thing track? And they say for strength, it tracks session scores, per muscle volume breakdowns, proximity to failure, time under tension, rep velocity, rest times, and rep cadence, in addition to heart rate zones, VO2 max estimation, sleep stages, recovery scoring, overnight HRV, all day activity, and real time stress detection. So here's the thing I genuinely don't understand. I get like when you're bench pressing, how you're going to tell me my, rep velocity and rep cadence because I'm throwing my wrist in the air as fast as the bar's moving. But yeah, when I'm doing my seated calf raises, what's happening there?
Yeah, and even if so you're going to see which muscles are undertrained or overworked week to week. If you're doing really any sort of seated lower body exercise, how the hell does your watch know what exercise you're doing?
I do not know. And hey, maybe they will reach out. Listen, I'm a skeptic, but I'm not a cynic. Maybe they will hear this. I mean, we're reaching several million houses as we speak.
Of course.
This will reach them and they'll reach out to us and say, hey, we'd love to show you a demo of how this works and give you a better explanation of the advanced algorithms that we're using such that we can take essentially the same general type of hardware that you're seeing in a lot of these wearables, and we are generating these novel insights. So, Lauren, we're just going to have to hang on to our seats, and we're in for the wild ride here. And I told you before we went on air, whether you like it or not, and you don't, Lauren,
I don't.
this is fitness for the next 18 months minimum. There's going to be a lot of expansion, I think, of wearable devices and mobile applications that are going to start getting into a lot of extrapolated algorithms, total black box algorithms, where they're going to say, based on XYZ and all this information we gathered from you from, your we're going to pull in a bunch of APIs and bring in your heart rate and bring in your weight and bring in, you tracked and this and that. Based on all these inputs that we've gathered, we're going to give you a score for this and a score for that and a score for the other and tell you what you need. And so that is going to happen in a big, big, big way, whether we're talking hardware companies or software companies. And of course, the hardware companies and the software companies are going to be working symbiotically because all the software companies who want to make these algorithms are going to have to either build the hardware to support the inputs, or they're going to have to link up with these companies that make the hardware and use their API to pull the data in. So this is where we're going to be for 18 months minimum. And I personally I'm less cynical than you and less disturbed by the idea of dealing with that for the next 18 months, because at the end of the day, I think this will be a fun area to work in and to see some research done. I've done a little bit of stuff in the lab where we've worked with, biomedical engineers who build hardware and build software and are trying to innovate in this space. And it's fun. You bring people in with a bunch of validated monitors. And I mean, when they jog on the treadmill, it sounds like they're like a human-sized box of Tic Tacs, just everything jumbling around with all this stuff on them. That's going to be the real, that's going to be where the rubber meets the road here, is when we actually start testing some of these, fancy new wearables and algorithms against legit gold standard criteria and measurements and say, well, are you actually living up to what you're claiming here? And that stuff, unfortunately, is going to lag way behind some of the exciting claims. So, but the work will get done, and I do think it's interesting work to be done.
Well, I think with so many new products that are all wrist wearables on the market, how does one choose? Do you go Apple Watch or Garmin or Whoop? Do you do Aura Ring? Do you do this Fort thing? Do you get that cortisol monitor? Do you get the uh, female cycle monitor? How does one pick?
So I think that this was a huge industry-wide mistake. And if the industry was smart, in my opinion, they would have colluded and they would have done some kind of obvious, surely some kind of antitrust violation, but they get together and say, listen, guys, the average human consumer has two wrists, and this is a huge
Yes.
issue for us. So we are all, instead of everyone making their own wristwatch or wrist worn wearable, we are all going to agree that we're doing rings because now at least a person can sample all 10, right? So instead of having
Yeah.
two companies in the mix, each consumer gets their 10 rings. They're walking around like Tom Brady with all of his Super Bowl rings, just kind of clanging around. But that would have been a smarter thing for the industry. And because they were all greedy and wanted to win the war for everyone's wrists, they passed up the opportunity to create a much easier war for just one of the 10 fingers. And frankly, we haven't even talked about toe rings.
Well, I think we could go anklet as well because it doesn't clash with your outfit, and arguably that might detect when you're doing lower body exercises,
Yeah.
and then we can at least kind of venture into the market of people who want to wear a watch. So, yeah,
You know,
I
it'd be
mean,
really interesting uh, when we start getting really into these like Meta and Google glasses that can see what
mm,
you see. Like, right now a lot of people complain because the apps where you take a picture of a food, obviously it's a two-dimensional picture from one vantage point, right? But imagine using something like that where your glasses actually see you pick up each, how many bites were picked up with a spoon, how big is your spoon as it's kind of coming toward your face. Like, I'm
that's so
wondering,
creepy.
but if we're doing, like, now we're talking about actually manipulating the food items in 3 dimensions and getting all of that information pulled in. And when you go and you go to the treadmill, it can, it looks and it says, oh, your hands were on the rails or they weren't. It sees the numbers on the treadmill. Oh, you did 6 miles at, whatever speed. So I don't know that we could see a future where there's a tremendous amount of information being aggregated purely based on visual data. And who knows, maybe these wearables will be really struggling to hang with some of the more visually oriented, kind of a software that just integrates that information. I don't know, Lauren. I don't know how it would be possible to wrangle such a massive, immense amount of data, but it's going to be an interesting world as people try to make these things useful.
Someone in the chat suggested smart socks, which I like because if anyone's ever had an Apple Watch that vibrates or beeps at you to stand up or go for a walk and, other just sort of annoying interruptions when you're working at your desk, imagine that the smart socks did like a really annoying kind of itchy foot vibration to make you move and then you go and move and it goes away. And then maybe that those could track steps and walking lunges and a variety of other things.
It's very
Definitely
possible.
better for calf raises.
That is true for sure. All right, Lauren, you have registered on the record your complaints about wearables. I have registered my non-complaint, I'm along for the ride, let's see where this goes opinion, which is a very bold take for me to put out there. I'm proud of myself for really going out on a limb. And one other thing I wanted to mention here in the outline before we wrap things up for the night, you have a headline here that just says, "Don't fall for TikTok's Trimester Zero." And I have no idea what this is about, and I assume you hate it, but I'm curious to see what this is.
So the world of TikTok is innovating as always, and we've talked cycle syncing, we've talked menopause misinformation, we've talked pregnancy and exercise, and now we're going to add another wrinkle to make everything super complicated and marketable to women by inventing trimester zero, where you take a bunch of supplements and do a bunch of health optimization protocols that are supposed to improve your fertility as you prepare to conceive.
Hmm. Okay. I could. Okay. So let me be the devil's advocate here. I could see this being potentially a useful and even positive thing if it wasn't a bunch of like weird supplements. If it was just like, hey, listen, there's all this data that shows like, being healthy leading into pregnancy, across a number of various health metrics is generally good for you, good for the baby. And so if it was like, hey, let's all, take charge of our health and do more physical activity and, kind of be more mindful of our eating habits and things like that. You could see a situation where people are like, hey, let's improve our metabolic health. And that's kind of part of our process of kind of family planning, starting from square one. I could see there being something kind of redeemable about that, is something relatively useful. I do think it's good to get out awareness about, the fact that it's a really, really good idea, to enter pregnancy being of, good metabolic health if you can swing it. So I think there's some utility in some of that messaging, which for a long time hasn't really been out there. But if it's just a big old ploy to sell supplements, then probably not so much.
Well, the other problem is that the whole concept of trimester zero, meaning do these things in 3 months. Because I completely agree with you. Like everything you just said is true, but a lot of those changes in order to be meaningful and certainly in order to have any effect on overall healthy pregnancy or I mean, with this, it's actually saying that it's going to improve your fertility. So you're going to do
Yeah.
these things for 3 months and then you'll be more likely to conceive. But whereas really it should be looking at those longer term behavior changes and not these shorter term sort of quippy TikTok trends.
Yeah, and frankly, anything you're doing in 3 months, especially if you're really getting after it, has more potential to reduce your fertility likelihood than actually increase it.
Well, you mean by if you're trying to lose a bunch of weight or
Yeah, like
something
if
like
you're
that?
like, oh, I'm gonna start, doing tremendous amounts of exercise and like crash dieting and being in a huge daily deficit and things like that.
Yeah, I think when we set such a narrow time limit, then we're unlikely to we're either going to do things that aren't going to really move the needle, or we're going that extreme approach that you just described.
Yeah, but there is, yeah. So let's instead of just criticizing Lauren, let's
Yes.
be socially responsible scientists putting out useful, actionable information. I would say this: if you are someone who is interested in starting a family and interested in becoming pregnant, there are things you can do leading into that process of planning a family where you can, for example, we do know that elevated BMI beyond certain ranges does reduce fertility to some extent. We know that there's a variety of health benefits for mom and baby when it comes to, getting metabolic health in check leading into that whole process, that whole stage of life. So there are positive things that can be done, for everyone's health in the picture. But these are your just good old fashioned generic pieces of health advice that should be taking place over many, many, many months, not like a little 3 month crash course leading into becoming pregnant. So there's definitely a lot of benefits of good metabolic health leading into pregnancy, but that's not something you can do in a day. It's not something you can do in a trimester. That's a long-term commitment to some very positive health behaviors, which can really pay off.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Lauren, that we want to get to tonight before we sign off? Does it make you viscerally angry when I try to throw a bone to bad ideas and turn them into good ideas? Because I feel like you're crawling out of your skin.
Well, I'm bringing them up because they're unreasonable and
Yes.
a shtick, and then you're trying to come at me like I'm the unreasonable one, as
Coming
if
at you.
I was like, just smoke cigarettes through your pregnancy.
Well, you told me that you supported that off air. You said
I
that
did.
you think that people who are trying to become pregnant should try to smoke as much as they can because you had some wacky idea that it would make the kids like immune to the smoke when they grow up. I don't know what you were talking about. But if you're going to do this kind of two-faced thing where you say one thing off the air and another thing on the air, I'm going to have to call you out. I'm going to have to bring attention to it. So I'm sorry to do this to you. But no, I mean, obviously, like, yeah, this is nonsensical, this idea of some kind of crazy crash course. But Lauren, in the interest of being a professional educator, I do think that regrettably, I don't know. I'm probably talking as if it's still the year 2013 when I was when I first became aware of like, the effect of, just like the metabolic considerations of, fertility and pregnancy and things like that, effects on mom, effects on the baby, etc. But I think it's good to bring attention to this idea of, thinking about your metabolic health leading into pregnancy, but not a good idea to sell like a 3-month crash course with a whole bunch of wacky supplements. So that's
I
my two
think we
cents.
need a belly button ring wearable to actually track fertility, and that you should use that connected to an app for multiple months, and that will really give you all of the insights and guidance on how to optimize conception.
Yeah. So Lauren, for someone, just to bring it back around, for someone who is planning to become pregnant and wants to do what they can to support their own health and the baby's health, what would you say is the worst idea? Would it be extended exercise bouts in a sauna, getting into a cold plunge wearing jeans, or chugging raw milk?
I would skip the raw milk, given those three excellent options.
Okay, so it sounds like you and RFK Jr. are mostly aligned. You just have a
Yeah.
small disagreement about, I guess, how much raw milk should be consumed is where you have a bone to pick.
I'm sure there's a brand of raw milk that's ideal uh, pre and post pregnancy.
Yeah.
We should contact him, get him on the pod,
You got to get,
shirtless in jeans to really give us some health insights into that question.
well, you got to get the right bacteria for the baby, right?
Right.
And that's why you can't
Right.
pasteurize it. All right, Lauren, do we want to address some of the listener feedback here? Mostly, I assume, hate mail. What do we got going on this week?
We got some questions about ashwagandha. Any thoughts about ashwagandha?
Uh, there are, some studies with a particular, like a KSM 66, particular form of it that seem to modestly reduce symptoms of anxiety. I mean, that seems to be the area where there's the strongest evidence. Adaptogens in general as a supplement class, I'm always highly skeptical of in general. I don't really get them, and the research tends to be really flimsy in that area. But yeah, like I said, with ashwagandha, the strongest evidence, there's a little bit of evidence for improving sleep, much stronger evidence for slightly, and again, stronger is relative, but stronger evidence for slightly reducing anxiety symptoms.
What about the issues of where you're getting it from? Because what I've encountered with ashwagandha is that there's a lot of kind of sketchiness in terms of the sourcing and making sure that it's not contaminated.
Yeah, I think the KSM 66, like I said, is kind of your best bet in terms of like production quality and consistency. I think it's kind of like Creapure creatine, where it's like a lot of the creatine companies go to Creapure for their raw materials. I think a lot of companies that sell ashwagandha products are going to the people who make the KSM 66 because it has this reputation for being pretty standardized in terms of quality and purity.
Any downsides other than wasting your money?
I mean, with any supplement, I would say always a good idea if you happen to be on medications to double check and make sure there's not going to be any kind of interactions. But outside of that, I have not heard of any major issues. I think honestly, one of the two things that come up again, I would check for medication interactions. I'm not aware of any off the top of my head, but it's never a bad idea to check. The only thing that kind of bothers me with sometimes how people talk about ashwagandha is that people will talk about using it for anxiety in cases where I'm like, you really ought to like medically treat your anxiety.
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing. And it's not ashwagandha's
It's like a
fault.
St. John's wort for depression.
Yeah, I think it's not the ashwagandha's fault, but I think sometimes people who like actually need like a real sledgehammer approach to treating like very serious anxiety that's reducing their quality of life, they're like, what if I took ashwagandha? And I'm like, you're going to need more than ashwagandha, you know? And so that's kind of one of those downsides. Whenever a supplement has some kind of indication that it might help with, like you said, anxiety symptoms, depression symptoms, I'm always really cautious to talk down the expectations so that people don't actually forego much more robust and effective treatments and use this instead.
Yeah, so the question about ashwagandha was from Ruby, and she said she had a question and a piss comment. That was actually the
Perfect.
subject line of her email.
Yeah.
So her comment is, I noticed you two love discussing weeing. Well, I just did the coast
Well,
to
excuse me.
coast.
One of us does, but go ahead.
I thought we've moved on to like, we were really into that, and then we got really into fart content, and then we've moved on to penis injections. So the podcast evolves, guys.
All of it against my will, but go ahead.
Well, I just did the coast to coast, a multi-sport race in New Zealand. And in the kayak section, I noticed people kept stopping and getting out of their kayaks and weeing on the side of the river. I like that she says weeing. I think that's cute.
Yeah.
I just weed in my kayak because, hey, it's full of water anyway, and stopping is a complete hassle. I was shocked that people would even consider not weeing in their kayaks. Surely, it's the second best sport after swimming for weeing at will. And way more embarrassing to wee on the side of a river with 1,000 people paddling past you than just a sneaky wee in there and no one ever knows until the guys at the end tip the water out of your boat.
I see. You just found it very charming to read out, things like a sneaky wee. So I appreciate you
I like
for,
a
yeah.
sneaky wee.
Here's what I'll say. 100% agreement. If you're getting out of a kayak that is submerged in a body of water to go urinate, you've completely lost the plot. So I completely, I feel like what she really wants here is a little bit of validation. Ruby, I understand that you urinated on yourself in public, and I am telling you that it is okay. And I would have done the same thing. And you need to stop thinking about it. You need to stop regretting it. Stop playing it back in your head. You did the right thing, and I would have done it too. Now, Lauren, can you give her similar encouragement?
Yeah, I think if you pee submerged in water, it's not in public.
Well, she was submerged. Now we have to get into, what kind of kayak. Were you above the water line, below the water line? I mean,
Okay.
you're more peeing in public when you're in a kayak than when you're swimming.
That's true, but as a woman without a shiwi, I would have done the same thing.
Yeah. Now, Lauren,
Also, if you have a kayak skirt, it's a whole thing getting out
oh
of
yeah.
the
And
I mean,
that's a good point because that now you're even less in public.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You're completely covered.
There's a lot of dynamics here. Here's a question for you, Lauren. I think it's generally well accepted you should not be urinating in a public pool. Right?
Oh, yeah, that's disgusting.
We're
The
complete.
ocean is acceptable, a public pool,
Yeah, I
absolutely
was
not.
gonna ask, is it all natural bodies of water where that rule kind of goes away? Like ocean, yes.
Yeah, within reason, I'm gonna have to give this a little bit of thought. Maybe a natural, like, hot spring that's um a tourist site, and so there's tons of people in the water, then it's a little bit rude,
Oh,
but
so now it's a proximity issue at that point and a
maybe.
size thing, yeah. And that's weird because in the hot spring, then there's this unusually cool draft of water that comes by, which is jarring.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I asked because I do swim in lakes pretty frequently, and I just wanted to check I want to get a sense of where the public opinion is
Where to
on
draw the
this.
line?
Yeah, where do we draw the line?
Where do we draw the line at number two in a natural body of water?
No, there's none of that.
Never acceptable?
No, you don't do that unless you're like a baby. Yeah, baby can do it, but that's it.
I remember when I was little, sometimes public pools being closed because somebody pooped in the pool.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that happened a few times,
Uh,
unfortunately.
that really sucks for the staff.
Yeah, I don't understand like what has to happen at that point, but I'm sure there's some kind of like chemical procedure, right? Where you're just like kind of like
Yeah, I
shocking the
don't think
pool.
you just scoop it out and, proceed as usual.
Yeah, there's got to be some kind of like the nuclear bomb version of like just a chemical blast, right? Where we're just doing turn up the chlorine by about 30x and just let it sit in the pool for a day.
It's the poop pool protocol,
Yeah. All right.
PPP.
Anything else we want to mention from our dear listeners?
Thank you everybody for listening. Please send me an email. I love reading all of them. I got some really entertaining ones in response to the Huberman podcast, which gave me quite a few laughs. I actually got no comments on my snake tongue, so maybe that was a one-off and we can all just move on. Front
It
page
is
fitness
a, if I
podcast
may,
at gmail.com.
uh, Huberman show. It's a pretty big budget, affair. Is it
So they
possible that
edited out my snake tongue.
did they
I
do
gotta
that
get
in
what you're
post? Have you checked? Because I'm very surprised that it reached that many people and there were no snake tongue comments.
The only snake tongue comment I saw was from someone who is clearly part of the FPF community.
Okay, good. But anyway, what was the email address again?
But I don't know that they didn't edit it out in post. And thank you for giving me another reason to feel really, really good about myself per usual. That would be frontpagefitnesspodcast at gmail.com.
Awesome. I want to thank everyone for listening and also implore them to make sure that you like the video, make sure that you subscribe and rate this show wherever you get it, whether you watch on YouTube in the live chat Mondays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, or you get it on Spotify after the fact, or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like it. And make sure, listen, folks, I can't stress this enough. There will come a day where the Front Page Fitness Instagram page makes a post. You do not want to be one of the people that misses the first post. So we have to get more followers for the Instagram page. On Instagram, it's at FPF Podcast. Do not miss out on the inaugural first post. Okay, you do
When we hit
not.
100,000 followers, we'll post.
Exactly. Yeah. That would be quite the marketing campaign. So all we need is 100,000. No, it will happen before then. I just, you only get one first post, Lauren. So I am going through the archives meticulously, curating, going through our content and trying to figure out what is us putting our very best foot forward. How will we implement it? How will we prepare for the flood of engagement that follows?
Right.
Because it's going to be such a high leverage post, I do expect that it's going to go pretty viral, if we're being honest.
Of course.
A lot of
course.
you see that a lot. The
The first post is always the big.
yeah, you one post from an account with an egg as their profile picture, and they basically, it reaches 8 million people. So I want to make sure that we're prepared to leverage all that excitement and turn that into a solid business model. So folks, it's at FPF Podcast. Make sure that you follow. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone, in the live chat. And we will be back with another episode in 7 days.